Hardie, then Morris.
Standing on the gas, Dick Johnson, but Bartlett is coming to him as they speed up Mountain Straight.
Up the top, up the mountain, across the top. Bartlett was enormously quick up there in yesterday's runoff, despite the wet. How quick can he be today in the dry?
Just look at the passing on the straight as they go through there. Now through GTX. That takes them along and they wind their way now up the mountain with this tremendous duel going for the lead with Dick Johnson and Kevin Bartlett. Up now to the cutting. Down through the gears, almost stopping for a moment to turn left. Through the cutting. And now heading onto the steepest part of the mountain. And then, of course, the flat run right across the top of the mountain.
Minute 18 seconds to the top of the mountain, the cross skyline for Dick Johnson.
Dick Johnson is the race leader. In second place, pole sitter Kevin Bartlett, and Peter Brock is third. Now down through the tricky, the torturous part of the racetrack. Working away hard is Dick Johnson. He's running for broke out in front. And you can imagine the tremendous delight of the spectators along pit straight when the first lap is completed and almost a little sideways coming out of the turn and working away at the front straight, Conrod Straight, Dick Johnson and Kevin Bartlett. The comparison between their two cars will be fairly evident. Alan Moffat, who lost a little in the opening lap, the big V8s gobbled up Moffat's Mazda, but he's sitting back there in about 12th or 13th position. Dice continues down the straightaway as we wait for them to come on in. And it's big Rev Kev Bartlett who has taken Johnson on the straightaway and takes the lead back. Here he comes, the completion of one lap, the opening lap in the James Hardie Classic. And it's Kevin Bartlett with Dick Johnson down the inside and Peter Brock just glued to their tails as they come down pit straight. Morris is fourth, Harvey is fifth, and the next one on the inside was Gary Rogers.
2 minutes 28, the standing lap time for the first lap.
Okay, can Johnson now do it back up the mountain? Bartlett, the pole man, out in front, looking good at this stage, and Johnson says, okay, let's do some racing. Brock sits back off them, waiting for a mistake. It's going to be a mistake. I don't think it's probably going to come from these two fellas running up front. They're professionals, they're the limit of their equipment. They're all running with full fuel tanks, as you can imagine, for the start, and carrying a lot of weight up the mountain.
Race has claimed its first casualty with car 52 rather, car 52, the Holden Story Escort, already off the circuit, being pushed backwards into the pits.
Okay, the Camaro goes through. Moffat is there, but come up over the top of the mountain this time. It's still Kevin Bartlett glued to his tail as Dick Johnson of Queensland. Brock is third as they swing through now into McPhillamy Park.
Morris has taken Harvey and slipped back up to fourth place.
Okay, the reaction to this race will be immense at the top of the mountain. Three big V8s, three different type of race cars. From our Channel 7 chopper, you can see them wending their way down through the S's. Morris back there in fourth. Fifth is John Harvey. Gary Rogers is sixth. Now, whether Bartlett's car has enough steam in the straights, you should be able to see Johnson led at this stage, but was passed on Conrod Straight by Kevin Bartlett. Peter Brock sitting very, very close indeed to the leaders, and Bob Morris not that far away in fourth place.
Winding up down the straight for the second time. Bartlett in front. Johnson slipstreaming. Not enough, I don't think, to pull out and pass. And Brock lying in wait.
Well, the Camaro has the legs, and this year it can stop. And that was the difference. Last year it had the legs, but Kev had cardiac arrest every time they got to the end of the straight. Here's Johnson. Now the brake duel. Whoa! Not much between them. There was almost a touch.
Bartlett's over the strip on the inside.
Boy, Dick Johnson wants to lead this in a hurry, and Brock says, let's make it 3 wide and have a real race of it.
Brock takes the inside run.
Oh.
Johnson's lost out in this battle. Bartlett maintains the lead. Brock is through to second.
Okay, Brock is now going to put the pressure on. I think Brock wants to get up there in front and run. Johnson says, hey, I was up there a minute ago. He's going back after it. The comparison of speed along going up the mountain straight between the Ford and the Commodore.
Oh, this is desperate stuff. Johnson just has that edge in power up the straight over Brock.
Here's Johnson again. Now it's Peter Brock who takes him on the inside. Whether or not Johnson's going to be happy after taking a lick there for the lead and almost getting squashed by the Camaro. Hello, we've had one down in the sand dunes. Just can't pick the number up at this stage, but the driver climbing out of it after what appears to be an excursion off the racetrack.
Bottom of Conrod, he's off, I think.
So after 2 laps, we already have one in the bunker. Up over the top of the mountain, Kevin Bartlett in the Camaro, and right on his tail is Peter Brock. Going to put plenty of pressure on Bartlett and see if that thing can stop and run strong. Bob Morris, meantime, has moved up a little closer to Dick Johnson. So we have a Camaro, a Commodore, and 2 Fords in the top 4. This is pretty racy stuff in the opening laps. Kevin Bartlett is attacking the first 5 laps as though he was going for pole position again.
After 2 laps, Laurie Nelson's Capri on the pits. Gee, look at his nose to tail, and Bobby Morris is slipping right into the back of Dick Johnson.
We have a tremendous race going here for the lead, and I think Brock is getting a little agitated, just wants to harass Kevin Bartlett a little more, see if he can force him into error. He sat in behind. Look at Bartlett leading left and right down Conrod Straight. He should have the long legs over Brock, but we'll wait and see what the braking is like when they get to the end of Conrod Straight. I'm quite surprised that Brock, in fact, is staying with Bartlett. Here he is pulling out. And now going to race Kevin down and just takes him very quickly. That was what Johnson tried to do, but got a fender caught in there at the same time. So, okay, a few laps down, and you listen to the crowd are up because it's Brocky coming from behind in the Commodore that takes Kevin Bartlett. The crowd goes wild along pit straight. Bartlett still in second. Johnson is third. Bob Morris is fourth. Gary Rogers fifth, and 6th place is held by John Harvey.
2:22.57 was the flying lap time for Kevin Bartlett last time around, despite the fact that he got nutted right there at the bottom of Conrod by Peter Brock. Brock leads up the mountain. Bartlett in hot pursuit, and has he got the power to... he might lose out on the corner here, I think. The right-hander.
Look at this.
There's a definite touch. Bartlett's lost something.
Dearie me. They're attacking this like it's the ovals at Talladega.
It's a flare off the Commodore, in fact, that came adrift there.
Well,
nudge, nudge.
Peter and Kevin certainly got a flair for the spectacular in the opening laps of this race. Through the cutting again, Morris has joined up, making it 4 wide. It looks like a railway car going up towards the top of the mountain. Through the top. Rocky at this stage with a little breather. That's the furthest he's been in front at this stage. Bartlett winds up across the top of the mountain. They're really stressing the Camaro at this stage. They've got plenty of pressure on him. I don't know whether Brock at this stage would want to be running out in front.
Army Reserve is in the pits for a briefing.
Yeah, through the Essence. Peter Brock looking good at this stage for the Marlboro Holden dealer team. Yeah, boy, this is the part of the racetrack that shows a professional. That's how smooth Peter Brock is. You can see he just opened a gap up now on Kevin Bartlett to put the pressure on the Camaro.
But right here and now, most people's predictions have gone out the window.
Have they what?
They said Brock wouldn't be able to keep pace with Johnson and Bartlett in the early laps. He's in front.
Okay, I'm not quite sure if he wants to be setting that pace, but he's doing just that probably. Wisely to stay out of the duel that was engaging Kevin Bartlett and Dick Johnson. However, heading down Conrod Straight at this stage, Peter Brock with the wood on them. In second place still Kevin Bartlett, and now it's Dick Johnson who ranges up behind Bartlett as they head down to the completion of another lap. Johnson was thinking about what Peter Brock did the lap before, but decides to tuck in and see if he can have a shot going back up the mountain one more time. Okay, oh, dearie me, Brock, I think has got problems, has he? He's pulled to the outside, and Bartlett, Brock is, I think, in trouble. Yes, he's being passed by Kevin Bartlett. Goes back into the race lead. Johnson is in second place.
Bobby Morris third.
And Brock has tailed right off back and forth. We'll see if he can get back up the mountain without a problem. Whether or not he just did that and then decided to hang back off the pace, we'll wait and see. But meanwhile, it's Big Rev Kev and the Rock victim running 1-2 as they head up the mountain again. So the changing fortunes of this race, unbelievable. Bobby Morris in the 7 Bob Jane entry now moves into third place, and they have put a long gap. We'll have to wait and see whether Brock is in fact in trouble. Well, they promised us a race and a half a few years back with the Camaros, and we're getting it this year.
New Stewart and Gagan's Army Reserve car is no longer in the pits. It's been pushed to a bivouac behind the pit area.
Well, there's the gap, and Brock, I think, is in trouble. Yes, he is. He's being passed by a lot of cars going up the mountain. So unbelievable at this stage that Peter Brock, who really went hard to try and catch the lead, take it and consolidate, has run into problems. We won't know what they are. Evan Green, obviously, in the pit area is following this, so we'll be checking out if Brock, in fact, does come into the pits with any problems.
Evan, in fact, I can see with John Shepherd at the moment heading down in the direction of the dealer team pit to inquire just what's the cause. But meantime, there's Bartlett, there's Johnson still. Nose and tail.
Look at Bobby Morris. Morris has caught them up as the three of them race across the top of the mountain. One Camaro, the pride of America's production cars, leads two Fords. Okay, they swing through onto the front straight. Conrod straight away, down the straightaway, and we'll see whether Johnson is going to mount an attack. That could be Brock further back.
Just ahead of Garth Wigston, you're right.
It is. Yes, he is. He's staying on the left-hand side of the road. We'll see if the car on the outside passes him, one of the recars. Yes, he does, but he still has sufficient to be able to get past these two slower cars heading down Conrod Straight. A race of changing fortunes at this stage. The most dynamic start that we've seen to a Hardie Classic here at Mount Panorama. At the moment, it's still Kevin Bartlett leading from Dick Johnson and Bobby Morris. And get ready for a change, because coming down pit straight, it's Morris and Dick Johnson who find the wood. And now, at the end of pit straight, going back up the mountain, it is now Dick Johnson who takes over the lead as Peter Brock comes into the pit area, and certainly an unscheduled pit stop. Okay, he's now in.
And Brock in the pits. They're checking with the driver to see just what the trouble is. It's the back tyre. Peter taking some of the fruit juice there. Speaking to Bruce Nowacki at the moment. I won't get near him. He's got a lot on his mind to such an early stop. He did have a coming together with Kevin Bartlett. It may just have been some rubbing at the back there. They've added fuel, but that was merely to top up and take full advantage of it. I'll have a word to Bruce Nowacki now.
Okay, have we got Bruce Nowacki there, Evan?
Very important.
Up the top of the mountain, Dick Johnson leads from Bartlett. What a race of changes. YG Brock didn't rejoin the race at all. He's pulled off behind the pit row and he's gone back to the Marlborough Holden dealer team encampment. There he is. YG, this is a shock.
Well, that now puts a ton of pressure on John Harvey and Vern Shupin. Whether or not that driving pairing will be split later in the day by Brock stepping into the car, we'll have to wait and see. Driving like the devil. Maybe the devil did it. Okay.
I understand they're going to do a diff change on Brock's car.
Okay, back at the race lead, and we still have one heck of a race going for us. We've got Queensland's Dick Johnson leading from Kevin Bartlett. Bobby Morris, not that far back behind. Shot that shows idea of the speed down Conrod Straight. Surprise, surprise. Kevin Bartlett with the long legs takes the lead back again at the end as they over some of the slower cars. Oh, look at this. We've got a good race going here. Let's not interrupt this for a moment. We've got Dick Johnson all over Kevin Bartlett like a wet blanket. Bobby Morris decides to sit back off them a little bit, and that's perhaps going to be a wise move. We have these two big V8s setting a tremendous pace out in front. Bartlett's so quick. At this stage, though, Dick Johnson manages to be able to pull the Camaro in as they head up the mountain, but down the mountain, of course, Bartlett has the long legs, but a great race going between these two. Okay, back to Evan Green in the pits with some information on Peter Brock.
it looks like that bump between Kevin Bartlett and Peter Brock might have disastrous consequences for the Holden Dealer team. Because the word, John Shepherd, is that he has axle trouble.
Yes, and by the look of the road here, Evan, when he pulled out of the pits, he's left one black mark, which would indicate he's got some problem in the rear axle, and we hear that it's actually broken the rear axle, but I'm not sure that the accident with Bartlett would have caused that, because it's driving on the right-hand wheel. I'm sorry, it's driving on the left-hand wheel, and he hit on the other side, so it's...
Unless it was a shock through the...
Possibly so.
In case the dip might be suspect.
Yes, yes.
Now, how long is it going to take to change?
I don't believe with the problem they've got, they're going to be in the hunt. You don't have time to change your mind up here these days. It's not like years ago when you had time to change these parts. It will take, if it's an axle, it will take them at least 20 minutes. If it's a dip, well, they're in big trouble there because it's quite a big job.
So early in the race, it might be the end of the Hardie event for the man who's won 5 times, Peter Brock. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. We're catching the action over the top of the mountain, about to come back down Conrod straightaway again with Kevin Bartlett out in front, running strongly. Dick Johnson in second place, and Channel 7's Bob Morris is in third place. Back behind in fourth place is John Harvey in the second of the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodores. Gary Rogers is the next one on number 11, and then number 27 is Garth Weakston of Tasmania.
Car 21 follows. That's Ron Dixon's Camaro, and then the first of the lower class cars, car 44, the BMW.
Okay, heading down to the end of Conrod Straight. The braking duel is on again between Kevin Bartlett and Big Camaro, and of course Dick Johnson in the Prudential True Blue Falcon number 17. Bob Morris third all. Bartlett gets off that corner a little scrappy, and this time Johnson says we've got a clear straight away and we've got a left-hander up the end. Let's see if we can change the positions, and he does just that. But watch Bartlett try and make this a short turn and work away at the inside. Couldn't do it that time. So Dick Johnson now takes the lead back in the race. Second place Bartlett, third place is Bobby Morris as they head up the mountain once again.
Morris has got to be the man smiling at the moment, hasn't he?
I think Morris is setting just the right pace. He's just letting these two pass and repass each other, and if something happens where they come together, Smiling Bob's going to be sitting there ready to pick up the pieces.
57 laps. Dick Johnson in front. Once more, Kevin Bartlett second. Bobby Morris in third place. Then John Harvey. Gary Rogers, Garth Weakston, Ron Dixon, and then the first of the 6-cylinder stroke rotary cars, and there are 2 of them running back-to-back at the moment. Car 44, the Grice BMW, followed by Alan Moffat in car 43, the RX-7.
Over the top of the mountain, and these two professionals who know absolutely the stress that their cars can take. They have absolute respect for each other. They're two pros, as I've said. They can race door handle to door handle without coming into any form of collision. But at the moment, it's Dick Johnson of Queensland, the 17 True Blue Prudential car, and moving up to keep the shade off his bumper is Kevin Bartlett once again in the 9 Camaro. Bobby Morris sits back off the pace by about 25 metres, and that's a good place to be at this stage. Once again, Conrod straight away. Now we'll watch the speed of the Camaro. Can he pull back that short lead that Dick Johnson is enjoying at the moment? I'll tell you what, there's no doubt about it. A set of 4-wheel disc brakes has made somewhat of a difference to the Camaros this year. At this stage last year, Kevin would have been thinking about changing rear pads. Okay, Conrod straight, the battle is on. Johnson says he can run this 178 miles an hour.
Bartlett pulls it out
and says
goodbye.
181 perhaps, or maybe they're not running at that speed.
Now brakes.
Johnson conserves, knows that he can at least stay with the race leader. Bartlett's not going to run away from him. Bartlett gets a little out in the dirt there, and he didn't so much that time. The previous lap he did, and that of course enabled Dick Johnson to take the lead. Morris is still back in third place. Just look how close they are. This is a 1,000-kilometre event. It's not a round of the National Touring Car Championship over 100.
Nope, they've only had 8 laps down. long way to go.
Well, it's quite obvious they can't keep this pace up all day. However, at this stage they seem to be enjoying it, racing nose to tail up the mountain and then pulling out and trying to repass down Conrod Straight.
Well, one thing you can say about both Bartlett and Johnson, they only know one way to race, and that's 100%.
Okay, they've cleared out just a little from Bob Morris. Bob's got an open racetrack though, and he certainly has them in his sights. Bartlett is very spectacular through the cutting. Just the tail out just a little bit. Johnson sits in behind. Heading up in the direction of Philamy Park. Just look at the speed. We've got one park further back there on the inside. We'll pick that up later for you. Okay, a little sideways motion that time. A little bit of paper blowing off the racetrack. And the crowd would just really be loving this at the top of the mountain. Kevin Bartlett in the Camaro leads. Dick Johnson, Bob Morris.
Johnny Harvey still holding down 4th spot in the second dealer team car at the moment. And hasn't he got a weight on his shoulders with Brock in behind the pits with diff problems. 5th spot, Gary Rogers in car 11. Which was, in fact, last year's winning Brock car, now been taken over by Gary Rogers. Then Garth Wigston, car 27, the Tasmanian entry. Then the second Camaro, as they stand on the track, car 21, Ron Dixon, the Barbecues Galore entry. And then, as I said just a few moments ago, the first of the 2 6-cylinder and rotary class cars, car 44, the BMW of Alan Grice and David Hobbs, followed on the racetrack at the moment by Alan Moffat in the Mazda RX-7.
Well, this great dice continues, and it shows promise of continuing for quite a while. We'll take a break and return to all the action live from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Driving sitting on the right-hand side, keeping in mind the BMW is a left-hand drive car, so that's exactly what it would look like as you head down with a little bit of interference there as we head down Conrod Straight. Staying to the left-hand side of the road. Alan Grice driving quite smoothly. Later in the day we'll be able to show you what it's like, or what Grice, how he drives the car, because we have remote on our race cam system, so we can show you the driver's hands and how he is attacking the wheel or not attacking. It's smooth. Okay, so Grice comes under the Hardie Bridge, heads down pit straight into the left-hander at Hell Corner. Through there quite smoothly. Heading now up Mountain Straight towards GTX Bend, the right-hander. Car very, very competitive. They've had problems with it, a few minor problems in practice, but as you can see, Alan Grice heading up the mountain. We'll have more in store from our camera cars, our chopper, 23 other camera locations around the circuit when we return to the James Hardie 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Ron Wanless pits. What message did you deliver up there? Because you look fairly belligerent.
Well, I went to find out who was driving it. I was going to punch the guy in the mouth. When I found out it was Ron Wanless, I thought I'd better back off a little. His next boxer, he might flatten me.
Kevin hasn't lost his sense of humour. Well, wretched luck for Kevin Bartlett. It's part of racing. You certainly have things wrapped up, and then all of a sudden things turn sour.
Dick Johnson, meantime back on the track, now has a 19-second lead over the second-placed car, the Falcon, car 7 of Bobby Morris.
Here's Alan Moffat heading up Mountain Straight, number 43.
In 8th position at the present time on the track.
And looking good.
And second in that 6-cylinder and rotary class. The BMW on the track just ahead of him, Alan Grice's car, is circulating in about 225. BMW in 7th spot. Moffat right behind him in 8th spot on the track at the present time. The IBM computer printout has car 17, Johnson first, car 7, Morris second, then Harvey in the second of the dealer team, cars 25. Gary Rogers in a Commodore car 11 is in 4th spot, then Garth Wigston, Commodore Dixon. Now the first of the Camaros on the track in car 21 is in 6th place, and those 2 smaller class cars camp right behind that leading division. That's the BMW and Mazda.
As he comes over the top of the mountain.
Seems to be something dragging on the track underneath his car, Mike.
Could be something just caught on the spoiler, a bit of paper or something. Could be the spoiler, has he? He was very, very concerned during practice yesterday about, yes, he has. He's lost the spoiler. Now that will have some marked effect on the performance of the Moffat car, because that was one thing that Alan was concerned on. They've been replacing front spoilers. The car sits so low to the ground. When he takes a bump, and you can see that clearly underneath the car, there's a bit appear to be jam there. But at this stage, he soldiers on in the race, and he's certainly still in the top 10. in the peripheral ported Mazda, and perhaps during a pit stop they can effect a very quick change to the front spoiler. His co-driver, of course, is Derek Bell, the co-winner at Le Mans this year.
The IBM computer informs us that of the first 20 cars, 17 in fact are 8-cylinder and over cars. There are only 3 of the smaller cylinder class cars in the top 20 at the present time, and those are the 2 that we've mentioned: the BMW car 44 of Alan Grice, car 43, the Moffat Mazda.
That was Peter Williamson's car with one of those Yank tanks that Peter likes to talk about, but this time it's running away from him going up the top of the mountain. We'll take you for another lap around, eh? Okay, that's Ron Dixon, I believe, that is leading the Williamson Celica across the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain, of course, takes in McPhillamy Park, the Castrol Tower, which we go past over Skyline, down into the Dipper.
He's holding pretty well to Dixon's tail.
Watch him catch Dixon up in a rush now. Okay, Dixon is now trying to pass this slower car in front of him, so he pulls to the left. And now he swings across, and Peter also takes that car. Heading down into Forest Elbow. Now watch at the speed difference now for you people back home. There's the Chevy Camaro.
When do you want me?
Okay, Peter Williamson, take it away.
When do you want me? Good morning, Australia. Welcome to Toyota territory in Bathurst 81. The race has settled down now. We're running second to the Japanese entry in the Datsun Bluebird turbos, being trialled by Graham Bailey and the other Celica, and the race has set its pattern. There's been a bit of drama, as you're probably aware. Hang on a sec. Don't want to miss there. Apparently Bartlett went in with a broken wheel by the look of it early in the race, and Johnson's looking very strong out in front. I've been hit twice in the start, and Mazda tried to outbrake me in the
flat strap over the top of the mountain.
Kevin Bartlett, meantime, Mike, just better let you know, is back on the track, having been in the pits for over 20 minutes, and 05 Peter Brock is back behind the pits again.
Well, that's bad luck indeed for Peter Brock. We'll continue our lap around Mount Panorama with Alan Grice. Beautiful smooth lines coming up with the flock of course cars there. There's obviously a problem up the top end, or perhaps even further down. Okay, down to Forest Elbow. Here's the truck that Grice now moves around the outside of.
Left-hand drive is supposed to be an advantage. The problem on this circuit is being on that side of the car, you get to the apex of the corner before you can see around it.
That's right too. Okay, Conrod straight away now. Really going strongly. Reliable motor car, and Grice had said all along that he will come into contentions in this race after lunch. So depending on what time you take your lunch, Alan Grice should be up there, and in fact in running at the moment in the 6th place. Alan Moffat in 7th, so a great dice game between the BMW and of course the peripheral ported Mazda of Alan Moffat. Heading down pit straight away again. Shots of the huge crowd here as we follow them down into Hell Corner, and once again back up the top of the mountain. Okay, we'll take a break and return live to Mount Panorama for the James Hardie 1000. That'll give you an idea of just how quick, in fact, the little Toyota Celica is down through the mountain. But as soon as they reach Forest Elbow, where they are about ready to reach now, you'll now see Dick Johnson with the booming V8 move to the outside and effect a pass. Here he comes. Wow. And we pan around as Dick Johnson takes Peter Williamson, and then Peter Williamson just follows him down Conrod straight away. And you'll see Johnson now run away. This particular point, they'll come over the top of the crest, down into the left-hander, of course, at Murray's Corner. But at this stage, Dick Johnson is really stretched out. There he is, our race leader, Dick Johnson of Queensland. Peter Williamson lost a lot of ground, as one would expect, and Johnson runs away and hides.
Lap time coming up for Johnson, 2:24.07.
That would be a very comfortable time for Dick Johnson. If he wanted to, he could run all day at 2:24s, and providing he can hold that pace. And how far in front, in fact, was Harvey?
19 seconds in front of Harvey and a minute 16 in front of Gary Rogers in car 11. I spoke to Dick about circulation times during the race, and I said, would you like to be going around 2:25s? And he said, well, I'd expect to be in about 7th place if I was doing 2:25s. So the fact that he is doing that time and he's in front shows you how easy he's doing things.
Well, I think that they would be looking at doing 2:22s or 2:21s if Kevin Bartlett was there and if Peter Brock was still there to race it. But the pressure offing at this particular point, things are looking pretty good for Dick Johnson. 2:24, he could run around and probably drive around one-handed like that for the rest of the race. John Harvey, though, has been the underdog so far at the Hardie Classic. At this stage, 36 seconds back in second place. But still, he'll sit there, and perhaps the pit stops will be very crucial indeed for the Johnson team today. Some paper blowing across the top of the mountain. Still very, very cool here at Mount Panorama. The big crowd here today certainly enjoying this sight, and that is Dick Johnson out in front, going over the mountain. Very, very smooth indeed down through there. And coming up behind John Goss and the KTEL Jaguar. We'll see if he can make the ground up. And actually their run down the Conrod Straight will be very interesting here. Look at the speed comparison. Goss, coming up behind him to put a lap on him is Dick Johnson. Johnson sitting to the left of the road. We're getting a lot of wind buffeting him down Conrod Straight today. The drivers were all remarking about that in practice.
Just had news from the pit area, Mike, that Brock will now be listed as a co-driver for car 25, so 05 is out of business. Okay, that's a shot from Lowe. He's not driving 25 because Johnny Harvey has come into contact with a car and is attempting to climb from the car. The
other car's going to lose his door if he doesn't shut it in a hurry.
Harvey is anything but happy about this arrangement. The other driver comes across the road. We'll see. Dearie me, what wretched luck there. Harvey tells it all by throwing his gloves on the ground. The other driver involved comes up and throws his gloves on the ground.
The Army Reserve, Jansen goes through. The flag marshals frantic at this point, trying to look at the stream of traffic.
Okay, Harvey quickly sizes up the situation and is now trying to see if they can...
Flame under the car.
Flame under the exhaust pipe, probably still burning. That is a precarious position to be. You see how close the cars are when they come around the corner. And this is where the flag marshals have to be so much in command of the situation to advise drivers that there is an obstacle in front. So the flag marshals very quickly, or the extinguisher marshal there, making sure that the grass doesn't set alight under John Harvey's car. Very off-putting indeed. Well, okay, let's go down to the pit area where Bob Morris's co-driver, John Fitzpatrick, a co-winner of the race in 1976, sits in with Evan Green.
Thank you, Mike. Well, John was just saying this seems to be the classic case of a slow car problem.
It would seem so, Evan, yes. So many times in these long races, the slow cars play a very important part, and you obviously have to have a lot of slow cars to make up the numbers of the race. And I must say that looking at the screen so far, the slow cars have been very, very good. They look in their mirrors, but inevitably you're going to come across one when he's very, very busy and he can't look in the mirror, and a slight error of judgment either way can be the finish of the race for someone, and that's what we've seen here.
We've already seen Kevin Bartlett virtually put out of the race and into the pits for a long spell because of the problem, as we watch the view from inside the car of Peter Williamson going down through those S's. And there's the close shave with Johnny Harvey's tail there. Wretched luck for Johnny Harvey, really, in second place. And then obviously in some sort of incident with another car, a slow car on the other side of the track. But it's Harvey, the second runner, and the man for whom Peter Brock was going to drive as relief driver, obviously way out of the race. You've had your own car in the pits too, by the way, John Fitzpatrick. Bob Morris made an unscheduled stop in Falcon number 7. There we can see it with the other car. The first time we've had a really clear view of who else is there. Car 51 is the Chickadee Chicken car of Graham Bailey, the ex-Peter Williamson Toyota Celica, been a consistent performer this year, and it's Graham Bailey's car that's been involved in that incident with Johnny Harvey. Well, he's a very experienced driver. I don't know what happened there, whether there was a third car that caused them both onto the track, which is not beyond possibility.
Yeah, it's a particularly hazardous part of the track there, you know, down through the dipper. Perhaps you know, you're committed in a big car and a slow car pulls in front of you and you just can't stop, and it's just bad luck, you know, that everybody's busy and you can't really blame anyone.
I know a point that you've been concerned about, John Fitzpatrick, as we watch your car with Bobby Morris going around, is the rescue vehicles, the trucks that go out to haul other cars. Now, you regard that as being a peculiar Bathurst hazard.
Yeah, I've always said it is. It's such a difficult problem. I don't know what you can do about it, you know. They've got these continuous walls round, so there's nowhere to take the cars away. But I think that breakdown vehicle is a hazard, and you know, I just keep my fingers crossed every time it goes out on the track. But on the other hand, you can't leave cars just sitting there on the side of the road, so, you know, what do you do? It's just a compromise.
Another service vehicle going out now as we speak. John, Bobby brought the car in just a moment ago. What was the trouble?
Well, there wasn't really any trouble. He did come in a little earlier than we expected. I thought he'd come in at 41 laps, because to make the race with only 3 pit stops, you have to do 41 laps, and he was using more fuel. He just ran out of fuel, so it means we'll have to have an extra pit stop, and it'll be interesting to see if the leading car can make the 41 laps, so he can do without that extra pit stop.
Well, that could have been a critical stop there, because Alan Jones, when he was helping out in commentary earlier on, was saying he regarded your car as being the one that was best placed.
Well, yes, I'm very happy the way Bobby's going. You know, those 3 cars at the beginning were going really fast. They were going faster than we wanted to go, faster than Bobby wanted to go, and he hung back. And I think watching those 3 cars, it was fairly obvious that all 3 of them couldn't really get past the quarter way. They were so close, running so close and so fast. So Bobby, if you discount the pit stops, we are theoretically in second place. Everyone else has to stop yet, so we're looking quite good.
But do you think maybe that extra stop has cost you the race?
Well, yes, let's see what everybody else does. If Dick Johnson gets to 41 laps, then that puts us in a difficult position, but it's so early to say, you know, it really is.
Maybe the critical thing, John Fitzpatrick, is that the pressure has been taken off Dick Johnson.
Yes, he's been driving under tremendous pressure, and he's been doing a fantastic job. It's nice to know that, you know, when you're in the lead and you've got a comfortable lead and you can ease off a little bit, it helps you in the traffic with the slow cars as well.
The voice of John Fitzpatrick. Let's return to the action here at the Great Race.
Last year, John Smith did the same
thing with Alan Grice's car.
That's the view coming down Conrod. You can see the cars coming towards Grice, then sweeping around the left-hander and passing him by, and how frustrating. The car running so well, being in such a great position, outright and in class, everything working so smoothly. And I mean, there are a virtual army of men there that just cannot budge this car.
Well, certainly a frustrating time for Alan Grice after running so strongly early in the race, consolidating his position on the track. There's the view outside with all the marshals just trying to dig the sand out of the trap to enable him to get back onto the racetrack again.
Will you get a 4-wheel drive?
Johnson still our race leader. Bob Morris in second place. I think third would then be car number 11. That's Gary Rogers Launceston Hotel car. And then surprise, surprise, coming through the field like everyone said he would, Alan Moffat. Now, I think the Alan Jones Warren Cullen car just coming into the pits at the moment, so we could have our world champion Alan Jones taking over the driving of the car. Warren Cullen has completed the first stint. Okay, Evan Green, take it away.
A moment of some history is taking place at the moment, because for the first time ever in this race at Bathurst, a reigning world champion is about to go out on the track. Alan Jones being strapped into the cockpit of car 12 as Warren Cullen adjusts the belts. Slightly different build, these men. I was asking Alan, waiting in the pits, how it felt about the race at a circuit he visited many times as a boy for the first time. And he smiled, at least I think he smiled beneath the balaclava, and said he was looking forward to it. It's been a fairly frustrating session for the world champion. He hasn't raced, of course, yet. And in practice, he had troubles galore. The car really has been a problem for them. But Cullen has been out there doing pretty good times. They're just cooling down the radiator at the moment. no real problem there, I don't think, just in getting rid of some excess water in the bucket and trying to cool the car down while it's stationary. You can see the big fresh air scoop there feeding air into the big multi-barrel carburetor. Alan Jones still behind the cockpit as Warren Cullen gives him his last bit of instructions. They had 2 cars for practice. Car 1, the one they had intended running, they decided not to operate because of problems. Alan Jones just trying to fire the car, first time unsuccessful. Second time, Warren about to give him instruction, hold it flat, he said, keep your foot flat down on the board. Alan's hardly driven the car, so it's an unfamiliar machine to him. Going in, giving him advice there as they tried to pump the car back into life. An awkward moment when a car has stopped, as Warren Cullen did, turn the power off when he came in to refuel and change over. Now they're having some trouble restarting. A lot of water has been sprayed over the engine. You saw them bring the bucket full of water to cool things down. Whether it's touched the ignition, I don't know. They're giving him a push start. A lot of drag there as he drops the clutch and tries to get it going. Coughing and spluttering. A pretty exhausting work this, trying to get the car to fire. The crew running up the whole length of pit lane virtually, trying to get the machine back into life again. And a fairly inauspicious start for the world champion as he tries to get his car running. I'll speak here to Warren Cullen. Warren, how has the car been running out there?
Quite all right, actually. We're, more than pleased with it. We're lacking a little bit of torque, but apart from that, it seems to be holding its own around the corners and under brakes. And been doing everything right.
Alan's on his way now. What instruction?
And we must have kicked the accelerator when I got out or something because it wouldn't start. But he's away now. It's pretty disastrous out there, actually. There's bloody cars all over the place, pardon my menace. Johnny Harvey's in up the top and makes it doubly hard to drive and all that debris.
It looks like it's pretty exhausting. You've been in a lot about it.
It's certainly hard work out there, particularly with a little bit of heat like a day like today. And
what instruction? What words did you give to Alan Jones before he went out in the car?
Well, I think it's a matter of the boxes and the hairs, actually. We obviously can't run up as quick as Johnson and KB were doing earlier, but, like I nearly passed KB out there on that lap, so I think we'll just be sort of a mid-range time and try and keep the car together, and we're going to land somewhere if we finish.
Would you win?
We'd have to be very lucky. I can see ourselves maybe in the first, say, 3rd or 4th, around that area. That's about the luck of the draw at this point.
Warren Cullen, back to you again to Mike Raven.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan Green. There we see the car with our Formula One World Driving Champion, Alan Jones. Don't take too much away because when they came into the pits with Warren Cullen at the wheel, they were in 6th position. So there is still a long way to go in this great race, as you will find out when we return live to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Actually, the officials were trying to help. Alan, can you hear us down there?
Yes, Mike, I can hear you.
I can just imagine what's running through your mind. The preparation, everything that's gone into this, and just sitting there watching the race go on and can't get out of there. What happened, Alan?
Yeah, that's exactly the way you feel. I'm just one member of about 20 people that put all their effort into this. And 20 people have put us in a good position, and one person's taken us out.
Okay, well, Alan has to leave us because they've now got it activated again. They're trying to tow him out to get him out of the what looked like quicksand. Can you still hear us, Alan?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you go. I know you're pretty busy. Let's try and get it back on the road, and good luck for the remainder of the race. Okay, we'll leave it there for a moment until Alan can concentrate on what's happening. Wretched luck indeed for him. Okay, the race continues on. Kevin Bartlett is back on the track. 05 car is back out there.
Bartlett is 9 laps down. 05, Brock, is 17 laps down on the leader. The leader is Dick Johnson. Car 17 after 48 laps. It's a 50-second leader over another Falcon, car 7, driven by Bob Morris. In the first of the Commodores, Gary Rogers, in car 11. He was 17 seconds further back behind Bob Morris.
There's Alan Jones in number 12, the Advance Australia entry, supported by Leyland and quite a number of other people who done their best to support the Warren Cullen effort to get Alan Jones to Australia. And I think, there goes Bobby Morris back through again. Of course, Morris at this stage is running in 2nd place. Let's go back to the pits. as you can see, Alan Grice has pitted. I think he'd be in no mood to do any driving for a moment or two after being caught down in the bunker. But John Smith stepped into the car. Keeping in mind, as I said before, it was Smith last year in the Craven Mild car. Hobbs, I'm sorry. David Hobbs, getting my internationals mixed up. Our co-driver for Alan Grice, David Hobbs, and our other camera car, of course, John Smith, the co-driver for Peter Williamson. David Hobbs, of course, takes over the car at a critical point of the race. He settles into the car. We'll be getting some pictures from him later. We'll let him settle down for a number of laps, and then perhaps for our American viewers taking in our telecast through the CBS network, an opportunity for David Hobbs, the commentator, to also be race car driver and tell us what it feels like.
There are only four cars rather, on the front lap at this moment. Dick Johnson, Bob Morris, Gary Rogers, and Garth Wigston.
I can't hear you.
Fifth place on the track is Alan Moffat, a lap down.
Okay, sixth place is Ron Dixon and the Camaros. Seventh is Gary Wilmington, a privateer. That's very good to see. Eighth place, of course, Murray Carter. Ninth is the Charlie O'Brien. I'm sorry, not Charlie O'Brien, but Bill O'Brien. And in 10th place, the Jansen Perkins, Cadbury Schweppes Commodore. Okay, trying to start the car in the pit area. Okay, getting going. So we might follow this just to have a look at the familiarisation lap for David Hobbs. Keeping in mind he hasn't been out there just taking the car over. A little bit of surf and turf for the BMW today. Okay.
All right, well, while David Hobbs heads up the mountain, we might hold this picture, but let's take a comment from Alan Grice, who's in the pits now with Evan Green.
A little bit of torque, but apart from that, it seems to be holding the turn around the corners and under brake. Been doing everything right.
Alan's on his way now. What is that?
We must have kicked the accelerator when I got out.
I made a mistake. Made a mistake. Simple as that. At that stage of the game, shouldn't have tried to hold the right-hand side of the road. Shouldn't have tried to go on as deep as that under brakes. And so I probably compounded. I probably made 3 mistakes. Once the rear locked up and it came around, I lost the option to go down the escape road. But I just made about 3 mistakes in a row, I suppose, and it's a pretty sad end of a fairly sad year.
It must be fairly easy to do, though, in a race where so much has been happening and there's so great a pressure upon the driver.
Oh, yeah, but I am living at it. I shouldn't stuff it up like that.
Now, how bad is the car? Is there any damage, or is it just sand underneath? Or anything been damaged in the loose, deep stuff you were caught in?
Well, unfortunately, I only had the opportunity to drive at about 40 or 50 yards on bitumen. It appears to be quite all right. The brake pedal felt okay, although, you know, I would have heated the brake material up. But Hobbs is very experienced. He'll be used to that, or he'll be able to resuscitate the brakes. I turned the engine off so it didn't overheat. I really don't think that there'll be anything wrong. The only possibility that I'm sure Hobbs is testing out at the moment is that being suddenly parked in a braking area, at the end of a high-speed braking area, with the pads on the discs, I may have cracked a disc, but I'm sure that he would be left-footing the car first of all and feeling whether that was the case. Also, we came straight in and Frank had the boys change the 4 wheels, so they've also had an opportunity to look at the discs. But you know, it's an unfortunate thing, although it's a 6-hour race, more than 6-hour race. It's at 10 or 12 minutes we lost there. That's the ball game.
How was the car going up to that point?
The car was very good. It was all the instruments were exactly right. I dropped 500 revs. I was only using 7.5 to make it a bit easy. We could run at the times. Mechanically, the car was exactly right. It was just the driver that made the cock up.
Well, Alan, very honest. Alan Grice, maybe when you had a drink, you could come and join us in the pit area and talk to David Hobbs on the radio and just see how the car is. In a few minutes?
I'd slash my wrist first.
No, he's still got a sense of humour. Alan Grice says you'd need to. Well, David Hobbs has taken over the car. He's made all the adjustments, the mirror, the seating position. There we can follow the car going up into GTX bend, right-hander. David Hobbs, a vastly experienced driver, drives for BMW North America. I've already
Tony and Gary know about BP quality. When you buy BP oils, you know you're getting a product your car's engine can depend on, and at a price that won't bust the budget. Course Plus for super high-performance engines. Fisco 2000, the high-performance multi-grade oil. Super Motor Oil, the low-budget multi-grade oil.
What's the story? Well, when I took over from Warren Cullen, I think previous to that, a piece of the airbox, the aluminium piece, had fallen in front of the radiator, and the car had been running very, very hot. In fact, this was what accounted for the unscheduled pit stop earlier in the race. And I think because it was running very hot, then on top of that, the oil pump belt's broken completely off, and we had no oil pressure at all. So it's lunged itself, I think.
You're out of the race?
I'd say so, yes.
How do you feel when you come so far for such a big race and have such a short drive?
Well, I'm not far from home.
You've had a rotten season.
Well, I've had better, that's for sure, but you know, that's the way it goes. I had a good season last year, and this year I've had a lot of bad luck, but yeah, that's motor racing. It's man-made and it's mechanical. I mean, you put those two things together, anything can happen.
But surely it's a greater disappointment when you're the world champion and so much more is expected of you.
Well, I don't think it's any greater disappointment because I'm the world champion. I think it's a disappointment for the team because probably there's a lot of expected on them. The pressures are on their shoulders to supply me with a good car, and I feel sorry for them, I really do.
Alan Jones, and back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much, Evan, and our thanks also and commiserations go, of course, to Alan Jones. Okay, Dick Johnson coming down, pit straight away. Ever so smoothly out in front. Has been able to ease off the pace, set his own pace. The pressure is not on him. We'll take a look at the IBM scorecard. Our thanks to IBM, who join us each and every year on our telecast from Mount Panorama. Our lead car, of course, is Dick Johnson of Queensland and John French of Queensland in the Falcon, the True Blue Prudential entry number 17. Second place, surprise, surprise, from 1976, 1981. Will it be the same? Bobby Morris and John Fitzpatrick for the Channel 7 Bob Jane T-Mart team. In third place, Commodore number 11. The Launceston Hotel Commodore, Gary Rogers, Benson Brown. Fourth place, Commodore number 27, Garth Weekston from Tasmania and Harrington. In fifth place, outright, Mazda number 43, the Peter Stuyvesant International RX-7, Alan Moffat, Derek Bell. In sixth place, of course, we have the Camaro Barbecues Galore entry of Ron Dixon and Bob Stevens. In seventh place,
seventh position, Mike, occupied by the Wilmington Griffin Falcon. I guess the high attrition rate amongst the other highly fancied cars has helped to move them up through the field. Murray Carter also in contention in his car 18, the Falcon, in eighth position outright, followed by the Commodore car 3 of Peter Jansen and Larry Perkins, and another Falcon, Bill O'Brien and Gary Cook in car 30. It takes us up to 10th, 11th spot at the present time, occupied by Brown Edmondson Commodore, and then Wanless and Radburn in car 16.
Well, that's a team running, yes, 11th and 12th, so they're running behind.
Yeah. I noticed that the first of the four-cylinder cars is now forced its way, in fact, into the top 20 on the track, and that's the Nissan Bluebird with Hassimi and Hoshino.
Light on. Okay, with the two Capris of Masterton and Stewart, and Bond and Smith, 15th and 16th at this moment. And for the oval track buffs, 19th position is held by Brian Callahan and Peter Mackay. Okay, there's our race leader, Dick Johnson, coming down at the completion of another lap.
Past the Alexander Rotary Mazda. Oh, one of them spun out. The Recar cars at the bottom.
Oh, dearie me. We'll get that for you in a second as we're committed to Dick Johnson. We'll just follow him through this turn, reposition, and then go back and take a look at the Recar car.
No, it's the Roadways. It's Garth Weekston.
Garth Weekston.
Car 27. And, of course, he was not all that far behind the leading pace.
Well, problems down there for Weekston, who's gone off. I don't think he's really got into the sand trap, but he's got problems there, and he's run around the front of the car and get out of harm's way. The two team cars have just gone past that. So drama already too for Garth Weekston.
Well, he was in 4th place when that incident occurred, and that's going to drop him down very rapidly.
Well, believe it or not, in 5th place, but probably, I would think, almost half a lap down, and that would be the Moffat Bell Mazda entry. Okay, Johnson goes over the top of the mountain. The Masterton Holmes Capri team boys are ready to effect a quick pit stop, and we wait for the arrival of their car in the pit so you can actually see how it all works. Don't forget our lap sponsors, of course, Coca-Cola bottlers for the first segment of laps, and now we're on to the Ingersoll Rand Awards, $50 a lap. We believe that we have oil everywhere down at the bottom of Murray's Corner. Now that's where you can see, actually, across to the right there, if that is in fact apart all the tyre marks coming through the corner, whether or not someone has dropped some oil coming through there. And that is the worst possible place to drop it. Okay, very gingerly through there goes Peter Brock. Camaro coming in, and the Masterton team car is already in the pit, so let's take a look at the pit activity now. Dry brake system where the pit crew members, as you can see, with full fire protective Nomex hoods, Nomex gear, Nomex gloves. Bring you the action fairly close up, as you can see. Changing wheels. Up to 33. It's the Steve Masterton car, and of course co-driver listed as Bruce Stewart, 33 off and running, rejoining the race. So that was very, very quick, a very effective pit stop. They're off and going quite smartly out of the pit area, a quick one.
The car is in 3rd position in the 6-cylinder class at the present time, Mike, and interesting, and something that we ought to give some attention to now at this stage of the race, also in 6th position in the index of performance as well. It's the handicap section of this James Hardie 1000 race, where by a very complicated mathematical formula, all cars can compete regardless of their cylinders and capacity in this index of performance. Which car gives the best performance overall, regardless of its engine capacity or number of cylinders? And the leader in the into pit straight and about to pass our commentary position. Moffat leading the index of performance, as I mentioned just a few moments ago. It is now in 4th position outright on the track, although 1 lap down on the race leader, Dick Johnson. Dick Johnson, car 17, the True Blue Prudential Falcon, leads the race by 51 seconds from another Falcon, Bobby Morris, in car 7, with a further 25-second spread to Gary Rogers in 3rd place at the present time in the Launceston Hotels entry, car 11.
There's Mrs. Bond, quite happy to have Colin back for the lunch break, as Don Smith takes over the Masterton Team Capri car. A former Bathurst winner, one of the most professional drivers in Australian motorsport.
Steve Masterton about to be passed by Alan Moffat in the RX-7.
It just keeps on going, the RX-7, peripheral ported version. Alan Moffat streaking over the top of the mountain, quite confident the car would run the distance without a problem in the world. Said he wouldn't really be concerned if it was a 24-hour race. Looks like Steve Masterton and Colin Bond, the lead drivers for their respective team cars, having a chat, assessing how their positions are at the moment and what they can do a little later.
Everybody seems to be smiling.
Well, they're looking good at this stage. Okay.
Here's a man that's looking good, Alan Moffat. Leader in the 6-cylinder and rotary class. 4th position outright on the track, and leader in the index of performance.
Here he goes down Conrod straight away. One more lap up for Moffat, and they're just coming back through the field. Given another couple of hours, any problems with the leaders, don't ever discount the possibility that Alan Moffat and Derek Bell might just not win outright the James Hardie 1000 Classic. We'll take a break and return with more.
And came second, which was its first showing. And we arrived at Bathurst pretty confident of what the car was capable of. And naturally, everyone that knows about the rock destroyed the whole car, and we had to start again. Actually, our setup is quite a bit different to the majority of the larger teams, because we only have a 1 or 2 man operation here, which is at my own home. We're fortunate enough to be in an area where it doesn't affect anyone. Our neighbours never complain because we don't make any noise or anything like that. Well, as you can see, it's a reasonably small workshop, which is a garage of my home, where everything else suffers actually, because my actual road car gets left outside and the race car takes pride of place in the workshop. And we have our racks of tyres. We have to have everything reasonably well set up because of the confined space that we're working in, because things can tend to get pretty cluttered at times. But with the operation we had straight after Sandown, my mechanic Roy McDonald and myself, we jumped in the truck and we drove straight back from Sandown after the race, and drove straight through to Brisbane here, where we continued to pull the car to pieces and get it ready for the James Hardie 1000 this weekend. Well, winning the James Hardie 1000 to me virtually means everything, because when I start and do something, I don't normally like to stop until such time as I've achieved what I've originally set out to do. And one of the things that I intended doing is winning the James Hardie 1000, not once, not twice, but I want to win it 6 times, because Brock's won it 5 times, and I just want to be better than anyone else.
Prophetic words from Dick Johnson. There you had an opportunity to see how Dick Johnson puts his racing operation into work. We also have the race continuing, a lot of pit activity, cars coming in and out, no one of significance that would affect the first 3 or 4 cars. There he is, True Blue. Down through the gears, coming back onto pit straight again. And I think we could have a pit stop on the cards for Dick Johnson. We might time that. Comes into the pit area.
Starting the clock now.
Okay, there'll be a driver change here. John French of Queensland takes over the running of the car for the second part. Doing it very orderly. They can afford to take a little extra time. At this stage, they hold quite the wood.
90 seconds when he went to the pits ahead of Gary Rogers, and a further 38 seconds call over Bob Morris.
Well, we'll spot for you whether Rogers can take over the lead while Johnson is in fact in the pits.
Well, the driver change has been completed. Another churn of fuel. Coming up 50 seconds. Consultation with the pit boss. Oh, look at that activity down pit road.
That's number 35, I think, that's causing all the problem down there.
That's the Alexander Mazda Rotary. There's KB. Bob Forbes, I would suggest, is at the wheel.
Okay, still looking for the Rogers car to go past the pit area.
It hasn't done so yet. We're up to 1:20 in the pits for Dick Johnson. Rogers, I would think, is going to come into view very shortly.
This is an extraordinarily long pit stop. Johnson shouting instructions to the crew. They've still got it jacked up.
Still no sign of Rogers. 1:45. There's Rogers.
Okay, Gary Rogers, number 11, now goes through to take over the lead. Okay, down to Evan Green.
A really long stop here, a man under the car. Dick Johnson getting very agitated with the amounts of time going. The instructions to John French to start the motor up. They're out, they've changed Oh, no, not ready yet. They've got one oil filler still to clap up. Now it's done. And a very worried Dick Johnson. That was a long pit stop. And a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of John French now. An old hand, though. He knows what it's all about. You can see the smooth oil there. Mainly from added oil. I don't know if it's an oil leak or the fact they just overfilled the car. We'll try and find that out. But that was a slow stop for Dick Johnson. I'll go over to the pit area if I can and see if I can have a word with him. He's very up there, throwing his gloves around. Let's just watch the scene here. I won't speak to him for a while. He's talking to his pit crew. You can see just in here, Dick Johnson, very agitated. He talks to the man about the time spent. He said, why were you doing that? There was no need to get that done. The man's under the car trying to fix something. They were giving warnings to John French that he's got new brakes. And it's a fairly heated discussion. Both so enthusiastic to try and win the race. An enormous amount of tension here. And Dick Johnson, whose very life is wrapped up with success in the Bathurst race, terribly concerned for the amount of time that they lost in the pits. He will still hold the lead, but it's touch and go at Bathurst. The old saying still applies. You don't win them on the track, but you lose them in the pits. Dick Johnson, hair wet with perspiration. We'll bring him over to the camera now. Dick, that was a long spell at the wheel and a long spell in the pits.
Mate, that was stupid. You know, they should have just kept going. There was nothing wrong with the thing. It's only an oil leak when you stop the engine, because it's just got, on the inlet side of the oil pump, it leaks, but when it's sucking, it doesn't leak a drop. They buggerised around here and tried to fix it. Well, you know, that's just a waste of time. The rest of the car is absolutely magnificent.
Put new brake pads in?
No way. They're brand new.
What did you tell John French before he went out? Any special instructions?
I just said, look, we're only using 6.5. You can do it on your ear. I use third gear up through the cutting, the whole deal, and it's just really great.
You're in front. You'd still be in front after that stop.
I sincerely hope so.
When will you believe you've got this race won?
When we finish across the line, when that flag goes down, not before.
And until then?
Until then, who knows?
How's it feel to be in the lead when it means so much to you, Nick?
Well, we're doing it very easy, and I'm sure that French is just real easy on the car, which he always is. There'll be absolutely no problems at all. None whatsoever.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a touch of wishful thinking there from Dick Johnson, because that pit stop was 2 minutes and 20 seconds and 2 cars went through while he was in there. Gary Rogers, first of all, he's now the race leader and picking up the first of his Coca-Cola bottlers lap money. Bob Morris also went through and is in second spot ahead of John French now at the wheel of car 17, the True Blue Falcon. There is Johnson French entry along pit straight. In third position on the track at the present time. The margin between first and second, Rogers and Morris, is 16 seconds.
We'll take a break and return with more entertaining action in the pits and on the track. The James Hardie 1000.
Every good mechanic will tell you the importance of having a quality oil in your car's engine. In Griffith and Yenda, Scott, Tony and Gary know about BP quality. When you buy BP oil...
Oh! Holy poly. That's the way to bend the front end on them. But anyway, pick up the driver is often going again. Back to John Fitzpatrick, co-winner here in 1976 with Bob Morris. Made a couple of visits here, team with Alan Moffat, of course, and had all sorts of problems. Never really got to drive last year. And the previous year, of course, was up there running strongly when the engine in the Ford expired. Okay, as we go across the Phillips scoreboard, we'll give you an update, of course, with the cars and how they are running in their various positions.
78 laps is the leading situation at the moment. And you'll find that on 78 laps, we've got car 11, Gary Rogers, car 7, Bob Morris, and also car 17, John French, at the wheel of the True Blue Falcon at the moment as we pan across. 77 lap situation you won't see on your screen for a little time yet, because as we pan across we'll pick up car 43, and on the colour code there in the orange bracket you'll find it about to come onto your screen now, and that's Alan Moffat's Mazda just ticking up onto the 78th lap. Peter Williamson in car 77 in the green colour code there is leading the 4-cylinder class.
in his Toyota Celica, and he has a 3-lap call at the present stage in that class situation over car 50, which is the Alfetta GTV, being driven by Gary Leggett and Phil McDonald.
Morris heads off. We'll keep a quick check on the gap between Gary Rogers and, of course, Bobby Morris, running 1-2 at this stage.
13.96 seconds between Rogers and Morris. So Morris, in fact, is closing because that gap just a lap or two back was about 3 seconds bigger than that.
Okay, well, Morris would be kept well aware of the situation in the pits. They don't want Rogers, who's really a cat amongst pigeons at the moment, to get too far away from them so they can't challenge. And, of course, I think John French will be called upon to also pull back the deficit as quickly as he can. Okay, another one in the pits. This is the Joe Moore and the Christine Gibson entry. We've already dealt with Fred Gibson, who's been driving in the pit area, who has been driving, of course, the Datsun. And Chris Gibson. And out goes that car. Quite an interesting combination. One of the fastest young ladies in motorsport. She prefers not to talk so much about her deeds in motorsport, but to get out there and drive. So Chris Gibson and Joe Moore in the Tavern entry continue with the race. Back into competition again.
Morris closing on the race leader Gary Rogers. The gap sticking down 15.97 seconds, just a couple of laps back now down to 13.96. And with see just what happens with that gap in the next few laps as the race continues. Fitzpatrick at the wheel, car 7 into the braking area.
Well, I think that gap could be coming down again because Morris definitely appears to be making some inroads on the outright lead. Gary Rogers just heading up Mountain Straight up towards Castrol at this very moment. And John Fitzpatrick a little tail happy there as he got through Hell Corner and heads up in the direction of the race leader. So they're not separated by too much at all. Gary Rogers in the Commodore and Bob Morris in second.
Tailing Fitzpatrick up the mountain with about 100 metres astern of him is 0.5. Peter Brock, but of course Brock about 9.
Comes to stops. I think
they've got the Mazda running. Very, very quick pit stop. Derek Bell, the co-winner with Jackie X at Le Mans this year, tries to get the Mazda RX-7 to fire. That doesn't take any trouble. And the Peter Stuyvesant International Challenge is off and running, looking for an outright at Bathurst this year. So Derek Bell is off and taken over the controls of the Moffat car, which has been running with that snapped front spoiler. They didn't even worry about that during the pit stop. And Moffat can now rely upon a man of great experience in Derek Bell. There's Alan Moffat, a little on the distraught side. He absolutely puts everything into his racing. I think he would be fairly happy with the situation at the moment. Okay, so Bell now goes back to join the race. The gap between Bob Morris and Gary Rogers is still around, between Bob Morris and number 17, which of course is the Dick Johnson John French car, is 17 seconds. Okay, take it away, Gary, with Alan Moffat.
A very quick pit stop and the scent of victory, I think, in Alan Moffat's nostrils. Derek Bell now in the car. Alan, and you must be very happy.
He's going like a Pan Am jet, mate.
You're leading the class, you're leading the index of performance, and you're right on the heels of the outright situation.
Okay, well, perhaps let's hope we keep her going. She's going great. Derek will take a couple of laps to settle down, but it really is running fine. We're very happy with it, and seem to be able to get a bit of a lead on some of the slower cars across the top. When the spoiler came up, I think we lost a bit of speed on the straightaway, but we just took it up another couple of RPM, and that seemed to work out all right.
I was going to say, it's silly to ask you if you've got any complaint about the car. Obviously not.
No, it's stopping well. The tires seem to be working fine. You have to nurse them just a little bit, but I'm very happy, and I think when you can get to the halfway mark and be in a situation like we are, then the others better be running real well in another couple of hours' time.
Were you able to take in any of the drama, any of the other front runners in the early stages?
Well, I don't know what happened to Peter Brock. The only car that's passed me has been the blue one.
Okay, things are running well, but I fingers crossed and hope they continue that way.
Keep up the drinking back home there.
Alan Moffat smiling in the pits.
Okay, thank you, Gary, and Alan Moffat, who grants a rather amazing interview stepping from the car and manages to get the plugs rolling within 30 seconds. Okay, there's Derek Bell settling himself into the car. He'll be able to keep the pace up after a couple of laps without too many problems at all. Meanwhile, Bobby Morris still leads the great race for 1981, the James Hardie, as Derek Bell comes down under brakes for this remarkable car. Moffat had hoped to run here last year. But it's running now, peripheral ported version, and shows most assuredly it is a front-running car in long-distance races, everyone knows, overseas. Evan Green has had a very, very busy time in the pits this morning. He's come back to join us now. Evan, your feelings of the race thus far?
Dick Johnson,
of course, came onto the straightaway after we had lost Wigston down in the bottom corner. There was some oil on the track there, as you can see, as the Army Muir car went through the two recars. Okay, he went in for the protection of the Armco, left the car out there. Then, of course, we took you for a drive with Alan Grice. The car, of course, was then handed over to David Hobbs during the course of the event. The car was very, very competitive up in the top six. But they were to have problems when Alan Grice, of course, put it in the sand dunes down at the end of the straight. Then the little Japanese driver who had to ask directions. He couldn't make himself understood and figured out the only way back to the pits was to go and repair the car and go chase himself, which he did. And it was a long sprint back, which proved he was fairly fit.
A long trip back with a battery in his hands, too. But that was all he needed. Oh, another one there, Mike.
Yes, we lost a few up subjects of the guardrail, and this was the critical pit stop that Dick Johnson wanted to complete without too much drama. Mechanics overseered it, thought there was an oil leak. Johnson pressured them not to. There was a driver change effective here as John French stepped into the car. Dick Johnson became most agitated with his own pit crew, and then, of course, went on to criticise them that they were being a little overprotective of the situation. That put them a fair way back, and now it's been up to the very capable John French to make the gap back. Number one on Bob Morris, and then, of course, later on Gary Rogers.
I was making the point a while ago about co-drivers, and an enormous burden rests on the shoulders of John French because he has to maintain the speed that Dick Johnson was doing. And you'll see some instances where the co-driver just doesn't have the skill of the lead driver. A good example, I think, is Clive Benson-Brown, who's taken over from Gary Rogers in the Commodore. He's not as quick as Gary, hasn't got the same experience, so he's under a very difficult assignment there to keep the car in one piece and keep reasonably competitive. But you've got, with Bobby Morris, a co-driver of the calibre of John Fitzpatrick, who really is good enough to drive number one for anyone in the world. And you've got Alan Moffat in car 43. You saw they're not Alan Moffat driving at the moment, but Derek Bell, who normally has the crowd jumping on tiptoes down through the S's because he is supremely sensational down through there. And Derek Bell won Le Mans this year. Now, that's the world's greatest sports car race. And here's this man who's won that race twice, co-driver to Alan Moffat. So there was a very high calibre of driver. We've got Jimmy Richards out there for Peter Brock and lapping at the moment in the fastest times of the race to try and get back some of the time that they lost. And they are thrashing that car. They've got nothing to lose, and I suspect not much to win. But they're out to make the point. Kevin Bartlett, who had Bob Forbes, a very capable co-driver, vastly underrated, has the best finishing record of any top driver here at Bathurst. Bobby Forbes had a good spell in the car, hopeless of course. Kevin Bartlett's got out, he's trying to crack the 100-mile-an-hour lap, and that'd be worth watching. If he doesn't crack the lap, he'll crack something else. And it might be a small car that gets in his way, because KB's in the really let's get up and eat 'em mood. And Alexander Surplus going down very well. She has with her Doug, what's his name, that well-known character from Gosford, Doug Clark, who won the 2-litre class last year in the Chickadee Chicken Salika, driving with Alexander Surplus. So that's a good team. And John Fitzpatrick down at the bottom of the straight, taking a very smooth line. John's about to go into business as a racing car constructor. He now lives in California, going to build his own Porsches, special tubular frame versions of the 935. And John knows what it's all about. And another man who maybe can tell us what it's all about is Gary Wilkinson in the pits.
Thank you very much, Evan. And of course, the car we're watching on the way up Mountain Straight at the moment is car 7, the Bob Morris, John Fitzpatrick Falcon. Fitz is in the car at the moment, and I've got Bobby Morris over here with
driving skill that gets past. It's Fitzpatrick versus French down through the driver's part of the section. If Fitzpatrick stays in front, it shows who's the better man. If he gets past on the straight, it shows who's got the most powerful car.
Okay, there we have it, the leader, John Fitzpatrick, and pulling out to effect passing manoeuvre is John French for Dick Johnson. Pulls down the left-hand side of the circuit. 2 Ford V8s, and now we have the race lead change effected. John French goes through to take over the lead in the James Hardie.
And that trembling feeling you can see through the feel through the ground is Queensland erupting. A lot of joy there, I would think, as the Queensland car gets in the lead again.
Wait and see if
they're both trying hard, aren't they, Mike? They've both gone a little sideways, and John Fitzpatrick more than John French, I'd say.
Perhaps French has been made aware of the fact that Fitzpatrick is due in for a driver change and wants to try and put as much of a gap as he can between himself and John Fitzpatrick.
The way Fitzpatrick is dragging the tail there suggests they might be wearing their rear tyres a little bit. You know, while they've been passed, it's still a remarkable achievement that a car that has been run in only this one race is so close in second place to a car that this year won the National Touring Car Championship, has been the outstanding vehicle in motor racing, has been developed through the full year. And that's an extraordinary achievement by Bob Morris's team to have built that car and developed it so well, and to have come out and run so splendidly in their first run. I can't recall a car coming out first time up like this in private hands and doing so well.
You know, a remarkable achievement, and I think Bob Morris made the right selection of a team driver who we've already dealt with, John Fitzpatrick, of course. Okay, over the top of the mountain, John French really starts to put some daylight between his back bumper and the front of John Fitzpatrick.
I think John Fitzpatrick got a slight handling problem. It may just be tyres, but the way he's sort of putting the tail out there suggests that he's just got a slight problem. Nothing that is too dramatic, but it does stop him from catching the flying car 17. That's an extra. Oh, isn't that a good shot? To show you the speed as John French hustles the big blue car down the bends here at Panorama.
He should be able to gain another 100 or 150 metres by the completion of the next lap, and I would anticipate that John Fitzpatrick will probably be heading in the direction of the pits, perhaps for a tyre change, and certainly, we believe, a driver change.
Bob Morris will be there, and he'll be fairly agitated. Bob is one of these supreme sprinters in Australia. Gets very nervous in the pits, and he's ready there, and I would imagine his feet will be itching for him to get back out. That's something he's going to be a bit wary about. There's Bob. You can see him pacing around. He's got to control himself. He can still win this race. He's not going to win it on the next couple of laps. You can see him trying to relax the neck muscles as he's wants to get in the car and do it himself. He's got a good man out there doing it. It was John Fitzpatrick who drove that last crucial stage back in 1976 when they won the Hardie for 1000, when the very experienced Fitzpatrick nursed the car with the failing rear end across the line. Very emotional. Bob Morris had to stand in the pits and watch.
Here it comes. John Fitzpatrick. Bobby Morris at the ready. The car is currently placed second. Opened the door. He was hopping out early, but forgot all the jacks were there. Okay, Fitz climbs from the car. He's done well for the team. Okay, waves one of the mechanics over to talk about something, or assist perhaps Bob in buckling up for the next driving stint. The team is well drilled, well organised. Good to see Bob Morris back in motorsport, running in the front line. Sat out most of the season. Had a drive in the Hardie Ferodo last year, but back with his own car this year. Okay, let's go trackside now to Gary Wilkinson, and hopefully he might be able to get a word with John Fitzpatrick.
Frantic activity here in the pits, taking on oil in Bobby Morris's car. Tyres also being changed. Bobby Morris is in the car. John Fitzpatrick is out. We've got to move slightly. We've got another car coming into the pits behind us. A frantic wheel change, car 7. The Morris entry having just lost the lead on the track to the French Johnson Falcon. Bob Morris, of course, now out to try and regain that situation. Tyres have changed. Morris is in the car, and he's off. Let's try and get a word with John Fitzpatrick about the situation in the car as soon as we can. A very quick discussion here with the pit crew leader, John Fitzpatrick. John, can you give us some indication how are things going out there?
Car's going really well.
You know, I was just driving the way they told me to. They set me a rev limit, and that's the way I was driving. The car's perfect. I just can't fault it.
You didn't make any, didn't do anything silly to try and stall off Johnson's car when he came up onto you then?
No, they were going faster. They're quite a bit faster on the straight, and there's a long way to go. It'd be stupid to try and win the race at this stage.
Is the car using a lot of oil? I noticed that they had to put some in then.
Yeah, it had used some oil, but that's the first time they're putting it in. In fact, right from when I started, the oil light was coming on braking. That was why I was going a little carefully, but it's nothing to worry about. That's the first they've put in.
Is it going well enough to outlast Johnson's car perhaps and win the race?
Well, I think they're quicker, and they're going to probably make one pit stop less than us, so we'll have to be very lucky to win. But the car feels good, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Reliability and consistency, that's what they're hoping for, Bobby Morris and John Fitzpatrick. The car back on the track and circulating as we return to Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Gary Wilkinson. Well, Bobby Morris back in number 7. We'll follow his progress back through the field and whether or not he can put the pressure on Johnson.
Stop now.
For Dick Johnson. And, of course, for John French.
John French not going to get out of the car, Mike. He's staying in there. So I think that maybe he should give another stop then, because Dick Johnson would certainly want to do the last spell in the car. But French is staying in place, so it suggests it's a very brief stop. I don't think Dick wants to lose more time in the pits. Just fuel, they're checking out the tyres, a quick sip of a drink. John French takes a cut lunch with him as well. He eats food as he drives along. He needs a bit of sustenance. That was a quick stop. He's out. And I made about 35 seconds, less than that, 31 seconds from the time he came to a stop to the time he left.
Okay, that was the very, very quick pit stop by John French. They're off and running again and still holding the lead. Bob Morris, Evan, we've been looking at, was still closing prior to that pit stop.
Yes, he'd been making up time all the time, and undoubtedly that message would have been given across to John French saying, hey, he's catching you. He would have said, well, what's the gap? The gap we last had, it was just under 2 minutes, 117 seconds is the timing we have there. It was longer than that at one stage. But this race could be decided on pit stops. I would say that this car has one more to make, unless John French truly is going to try and go all the way himself, and I don't think he will. And certainly Bob Morris's car will have to come in again for one more stop.
One of the interesting innovations of this year's James Hardie 1000 is the Wins Friction Proofing $5,000 award to the pit crew of the car completing the fastest time over a secret 10-lap section of the race. And the envelope that was selected, what was given to us prior to it, gives us now that the driver who was leading laps 36 to 45. Okay, we now join Peter Williamson in the car. We believe that Peter has received a ding in the back and may even be leaking fuel, but we'll get that story shortly. Okay, Peter Williamson, Mike Raymond. Peter.
Hello, Mike Raymond.
You have some problems, Peter. Okay, we'll check out the tail of the car and just see. He's coming up to try and overtake Brian Callahan in the Ford. We'll pick it up from the chopper, see if we can trace them down pit straight.
I can't see any problem there. I saw the cars that went by the commentary box here and didn't see any sign of damage, but he may have had a bump there.
Second race is one of the drivers involved. We've had absolute drama here. The track is completely blocked. A replay of it for you.
Well, Christine Cole is involved. She was very early there. You can see Christine on the left. Bob Morris came along. He spun there, the car going backwards. Christine was involved first with another car. There are cars on the other side. Alan Brown, one car just coming in the back, slowing down. I think it might be David Selden on the far side as well. In the smaller car, maybe a Gemini across there. Let's have a look at that again in a little while if we can, Mike, just to try and pick up who got into stop it. Christine Cole, as she was. Christine Gibson now certainly involved. I think she's okay, though, kids at home who are watching this race, I know. But the track is blocked. Not all those cars are involved. The leading group, but there are about 5 cars caught up there. 57 is one of them. Now, here's Christine. You can see there's flame from the back of a car. A flash there. There's a little bit of petrol or oil spills there. Christine's car spinning on the left. Bob Morris's car shoved through by the car behind. He spins around and comes across onto the left-hand side of the track as other vehicles come pouring down towards us. 57 is certainly there. That's the Sutton Motors entry. David Selden and Phil Ward in the Gemini. They're in the front line there. Alan Brown and Tony Edmondson. Christine Gibson and Bobby Morris. They're all involved. There's a car I can't quite pick up that's into the side of Christine Gibson's car, and that was caught up in the very early stages and helped precipitate it. We're coming down now in the copter shop. It's car 11. It's Clive Benson Brown, who had been sharing that earlier on with Gary Rogers. They were leading at one stage, and that's gone sideways into Christine's car. You can see there, and they're the two that started it off, I would say.
Alan Grice, Mike Raymond, can you read me, Alan?
Yes, I can hear you, Mike. There's plenty of confusion up here. There's
can you explain?
Whistles running everywhere. I just started up. I thought they wanted me to. I'm just going to turn it off again.
Okay. Did you get warning of that with the flags before you just got there?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Were you warned by flags before you reached that accident, or did you just come up on it as it was happening?
Yes. No. I was very fortunate that your Channel 7 director broke in and told me that there was a bad accident on. So I was able to get on the brakes and also get my arm out the window and slow some of the other cars. There's KB limping back, obviously.
Alan, can you come back?
So Kevin Bartlett is involved as well in car 9.
You want me to move back?
Another driver there. A number of people being helped out. There are a few of them seem to be slightly injured. You can see there as they're being helped back.
Okay.
That's in the crowd. Some people shocked by the confusion of the scene there. The track is completely blocked. We have Alan Grice in car 44 talking there.
No worries, mate. How's your leg, all right? How's your leg?
I think I broke something in the hip.
A bit of a bump on the hip?
Yeah, I braced myself.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Bartlett, of course, has an artificial hip joint from a previous accident in Alola. He suffered an accident in New Zealand. Thinks he may have broken the joint in his hip.
KB's okay. He said he's bruised his hip on the hip brace in his car. He's okay. It doesn't appear to me as though anybody else is damaged. When I arrived on the scene, there wasn't a great deal of activity trying to get people out of motor cars, so I can only assume that they've all safely got out. There's the beginnings of the normal mass confusion occurring, or is about to occur up here. We've got people starting to come over the fence. Police officials running around don't appear to have a leader at the moment. The drivers have certainly decided that the rotor race is finished. I think the rules will say there'll have to be a restart. I'm not quite sure. I'm quite sure Frank will be going through the rule book back in the pits to sort out whether there should be a restart of the race. It's just a typical scene of confusion at the moment. Doesn't appear to be a leader.
Which of the drivers can you see around there, Alan?
Yes, well, I've seen most of them. I haven't seen Chrissy Gibson, but then right from the beginning, that was the first car I looked at, and there was nobody in the motor car. She's obviously out quite safely. I've seen Tony Edmondson. He's quite okay. Rusty French arrived on the scene after me. I'm not sure which recar motor car that is.
It's car 4. That's the Alan Brown car.
Oh, of course, you're quite right, because I did see Tony Edmondson. He's okay. Kevin did tell me that his car is in a very bad way. I can't see any damage from my end, but it's obviously on the front left corner.
Now, is that Kevin we can see with Chris Cole helping, or Chris Gibson helping him there, just walking along? I think Chrissy Gibson on the right, giving her arm around Kevin Bartlett, and that'll be good news for her children at home, her two daughters watching this race. Mummy's okay, girls. She's just helping Kevin Bartlett there, and she's okay.
Yes, I think Fitz was probably in that car. Was it Fitz or Bob Morris?
Bob Morris.
Bob, was it?
Yes, Bob had taken over and was making up ground. He was in second place, but it got to within about 38 seconds of the lead, Alan. They're trying. We're just doing a replay now. You can't see it. There's some flame behind. We can see. Clive Benson Brown has gone into Chris Gibson's car, but it looks like she and maybe Bobby Morris hit first, touched, and Bob Morris's car got hit from behind by Tony Edmondson, and Bob Morris's car is spun right round, and then Kevin Bartlett coming along behind in the big Camaro runs into the group there, and he braced very hard, as you were saying, and hurt his hip on the bar in the car. Kevin, of course, has an artificial hip from the accident in New Zealand in 1976.
They've just taken Bobby Morris past. He's looks as though he's got a bit of a bruise on the leg also, and he's in some shock, but he's quite okay and walking, and they're just taking him back behind my motor car into the ambulance by the looks.
That's Christine Gibson.
I haven't physically seen Chris, but that was the first car I looked at when I arrived because it was fairly badly damaged.
Yeah, we can see her, Alan. She's just going into an ambulance. She's walking in. I think she's going there for transport as much as anything, and certainly they will want to check her over. But Christine is okay. She's sitting in the front seat of an ambulance.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, and we can see her.
I'm very pleased to hear that. It looks like we're going to start getting a few cars out.
Before you go, Alan, and thank you, you've really done an incredible job there, but before you go, what's it like driving in the race against people who are your rivals on the track and very close friends at home to see that sort of accident in front of you?
Well, I've started up now. As I go past, you can probably pan your camera and see the motor cars on the right.
Well, for the first time in this race, Alan, in the history of it, we have the pits absolutely bare and all the cars parked on top of a mountain.
Here's Kevin Bartlett's Chevy Camaro, which was an early leader of the race, doing sensational times out of the race.
Yeah, there's the front of KB's car.
Yes.
Front of Chris's car.
We're just passing David Selden's car.
Salika, yeah. Bob Morris. I'd say there's probably, just doing a quick sum in my head, there's probably something in the order of $450,000 to $500,000 worth of damage just sitting back there. It's a very sad way for a thing to happen in a motor race like this. It makes no winner. It means that there's just no winner of the motor race. There may be a restart, there may be a winner declared, but unfortunately it makes it a non-race. Still, it's, every sporting event has its highs and has its lows, and I guess we've just seen a very unfortunate low. Hardie of 1,000.
Alan Grice just driving away from the scene of that accident. Those 5 cars were involved. 5 seriously more than that, tangled up there. The whole race brought to a halt. And the field now threading down towards the pits. We'll bring news as what's going to happen with the race. But the news from the people there seems to be that everyone's okay. There are a couple of people limping. Bobby Morris seemed to have a bruised hip. We'll just show it again. That's Bob there. Now, a little earlier than that, he and Christine Gibson seemed to touch as they came around the top of McPhillamy Park. Clyde Benson Brown then came in and gave a thump on the back of Morris's car and spun him right around. Kevin Bartlett was involved with David Selden, car number 57, Alan Brown, number 4.
I think we'll have to take a look at this one more time to have a look. Benson Brown has gone in to Chris Gibson. Morris hits the front and I think gets hit again from behind. He's just there.
That's when Alan Brown came in and David Selden on the other side caught up in it all in the little Gemini. He was a fairly early participant in that. Maybe the 2 faster cars were trying to overtake him there. There's only conjecture at the moment. We don't know what's happened. 6 cars involved. Just how damaged the Selden car is, I don't know. But certainly some very heavy damage to the others. To Chris Gibson's car, number 20, which was running in 6th place. To Bobby Morris's car, number 7, which was running in 2nd place and catching the leader. And to Alan Brown's car, which was also one of the front runners among the Commodores. And to a car that had led for a while when being driven by Gary Rogers. And with Clyde Benson Brown, it came in so close he couldn't do much about it and just ran into the back of Bob Morris. And he is out of the running at the moment. Well, action here from the great race. We'll be back in a few minutes. Recently now destroyed literally to tatters and to wreckage.
Well, I feel sorry for them, because like the Benson Brown car, it's done the most amazing job. I don't think anybody expected the car to be so competitive, and Rogers drove so well. I was watching him on the monitor during my break, and he drove absolutely well, and magnificently. And Bob Morris, I feel for Bob. I could almost break into tears like he does, you know.
What we're doing now is looking at Christine Gibson's car and the back of a car that I can't even identify at the moment. It's it's a little HDT, yeah, the Isuzu, the Gemini 57 is being thumped so hard. Bob Morris's car. It's a David Selden car.
Oh dear.
Bob Morris says, well, goodness me, Bob has taken some hard hits there. He looked as though he was limping, and someone said he had sore legs. I can believe that, because around the front, just behind the wheel on the driver's side, has been crushed right in. He got a very heavy impact there, I'd say. Christine Gibson's car is smothered in foam, and now we're looking at the Clyde Benson Brown Commodore from the front, and it looks really like a brick wall painted with graffiti, just a slab of metal there with an image of of a grill. Oh, goodness me, that hit someone very hard.
Yes.
Now, someone who hit, I think, was Bobby Morris from the back. Bob had got involved with Christine and then was hit from the side and spun round. There was flame for a while there. A couple of cars started to burn, but he stopped very quickly, and the marshals were right on the scene, as you noted, and really in control of the situation very, very quickly. There's some terrible damage being done up there, though, Peter Williamson.
Oh, it's so sad. You know, it's just that they work so hard on it. I know Bob. I know George Shepard, who built Bob's car. George's a pretty famous guy. He ran the Holden dealer team, rally team, for many years, the Castrol rally team for GM. And he worked night and day on that car, and certainly it's a credit to him. First up start, it ran so well. George must be in the pits in almost absolute despair. I feel for him. He's a very, very nice fellow. You know that, haven't you? You must have spent hours and hours with George. You know his dedication.
I spent weeks and weeks with him. We drove together with Jellic Knight Jack Murray, whom I hope is watching.
Yeah, I hope you are, Jack. Old Joey, I was going to send him a call later on during the day. He didn't come up this year. We miss him. We miss you, Jack. He's probably sitting up there eating away on a pie or a cake or something.
We're watching now the side of Christine Gibson's car, where it was hit very hard into the broken wheel and the big indentation, and it will carry straight along the back of the Gemini, which is demolished. A lot of fuel will have come from the tank, even with the safety fuel tanks. There's been a lot of spillage of fuel there. That car has had several hits in the back, I'd say, as it was spun around. But I must confess that I was very concerned for Christine Gibson, because we could see her car there with some very severe-looking marks on the side of the car.
We have information down from the Hardie Centre that an official announcement regarding the race is to be made within a matter of seconds, so we'll cross down there.
With the decision on the fate of the race from the Australian Racing Drivers Club, Ivan Stibbard.
Well, the decision is that the race is now concluded. We have covered 120 laps, and the regulations say that after 60% of the distance has been covered and the red flag is used, the race must be declared. We cannot have a restart.
Well, that means that Dick Johnson is the winner under those conditions?
Yes, he has won.
Ivan, what reports have you had from the top of the mountain? Has anybody been badly hurt?
Not that we can see. They're in the ambulance coming down. They seem okay. We don't know. All I was concerned about is trying to get the track cleared, and there's quite a mess up there, and it would take at least an hour, hour and a half to clear it up, and under the circumstances, this is the way we've got to go.
Well, I guess your organisation and the stewards are going to be working long hours into tonight to sort this tangle out.
Yes, we are.
Would there have been any choice, had the track, could the track have been cleared, would you have continued the race?
No, we can't. The regulations are quite definite, not only our regulations, but the regulations of the FIA, that once the red flag is used, which it had to be, the track was completely blocked, the race must be declared after 60% of the distance has been covered.
That's the word from Ivan Stibbard from the Australian Racing Drivers Club. The race has been declared finished following that monumental accident on top of the mountain, blocking the track. And with 122 laps completed, Dick Johnson is the winner under these circumstances of the 1981 James Hardie 1000. Let's go back now to Mike Raymond momentarily in our commentary position. Meantime, Mike, I'll hand over to you and I'll try and get a hold of some of the people that were actually involved in that incident on the mountain.
Thank you, Gary. Well, accident last year took Dick Johnson out of the race at the top of the mountain, or heading up to the top of the mountain, and the race being declared as a result in favour of Dick Johnson following the race stoppage because the track being blocked. I don't think that Dick would have liked to have won the race in these circumstances, do you, Evan?
Well, except that he was leading and he was in front, he was going to win it, I think.
Yep.
He'd have a great load off his mind because Dick would have he wouldn't have wanted to win, of course. A strange situation. Probably Bob Morris will be second. The car we're looking at now being hauled up. The race will be terminated when they last cross the finish line, I would assume, which would mean that Bob Morris, whose car we can see being hauled onto the recovery vehicle, will be declared second, he and John Fitzpatrick. But no one wanted the race to finish this way, but the one good element apparently is that no one has been badly hurt. Dick Johnson now, it's just starting to sink into him that he has won the race. The man who last year lost it after 17 laps and hit a rock and promoted that spontaneous, incredible reaction by you, the viewing public across Australia, who have enabled Dick Johnson to go motor racing this year. And it's your victory. And they're about to speak to the man who has won the race, with Peter Brock moving in to congratulate him, and Vern Schuppen. They're very pleased. And you couldn't have had a more popular winner, Johnny Harvey, moving in as well. This shows you the spirit between the rivals. And let's go down now to Gary Wilkinson to talk to the winner of the 1981 James Hardie 1000, Dick Johnson.
The pandemonium continues in pit row following this dramatic conclusion to the race and the declaration. You probably heard the shout when the words were declared by Ivan Stibbard that the race had been officially declared finished and that Dick Johnson was the winner. Dick, a hell of a way to win a race. We got our names right for once. Hey. A hell of a way to win a race, but you were front running at the time, and I guess that's what counts.
Well, the car was looking really well, so who knows, you know, anything can go wrong, I know that, but it's a bad way to finish a race. It's very unlucky for the other guys that were involved in the incident up there.
Yep.
And just for the whole scene, you know, it's one hell of a shame.
Jill, it must be a horrendous situation for wives in these circumstances, and Dick was not involved, but I mean, it must flash through your mind for one awful moment.
It sure does, Harry, it sure does, but today was his day. Thank heavens for that.
Australian Touring Car Champion and King of the Mountain, Dick Johnson, and a just reward despite the circumstances after last year's effort.
Gary, I'd just like to say thanks very much to all those people in Australia who last year supported us, because I feel sure that if we had the right chance, we could do something with it. And I'm just thankful we have, because now I feel as though I've done justice to all those people that have helped us.
An emotionally draining experience, even though Dick Johnson wasn't involved in that smash-up. A round of applause here for Dick, Touring Car Champion and winner of the the James Hardie 1000. Everybody's getting a little carried away as we take you back to Mike Raymond in our central commentary position.
Thank you very much. We'll obviously be following the race and recapping it and talking to some of the drivers who were involved, not only in that accident, but also involved in class wins, provisional. We welcome you back to Mount Panorama of Bathurst for those people who have just switched on or walked into home to find out the race is declared ahead of schedule or completed ahead of schedule. The race has been stopped, declared, because of an accident, a horrendous accident on top of the mountain that had taken out Chris Gibson rather, and of course Bobby Morris involved, who was running second in the race. Officials under FIA regulations cannot restart the race because of the number of completed laps. So the race has in fact been declared in favour of Dick Johnson. At the moment, though, we'll show you on top of the mountain some of the scenes up there. There's the Gibson Moore car, the King George Tavern 4, that was running so strongly throughout the day. And if that car looks in a bad way, you can also consider that Bob Morris's car has already gone back to the pits, or there it is there, and it's even in worse condition. Bob Morris, in fact, has limped off, been taken in the ambulance down to the medical room here. Doctors checking him over, same with Kevin Bartlett. But the door has been very severely torn, and the entire side of the car squashed in. That was a brand new race car this morning when we started the race. Well, the Super says everything. The James Hardie 1000 race has been declared, and the winner, of course, Dick Johnson. To be totally fair to Johnson, of course, their car was leading the race when it was declared. However, everyone is heading in the direction of the pit area to find out exactly what the class placings are. Evan Green mentioned a short while ago that the race will probably be declared on the previous lap, which would give Bob Morris second place in the event. And of course, the other vehicle that was running so strongly, the Benson Brown, Gary Rogers car, waiting for some information on that. But a terrible scene at the top of the mountain after we had such a tremendous race, 1,000 kilometre event, was shaping up to be a duel all the way to the finish, with Bob Morris coming back to put a lot of pressure on John French. John French was driving the Dick Johnson car and may have driven it all the way through to the finish of the race. There was about 38-second gap. Let's perhaps call up shortly the IBM computer printout of the top 10 positions as they were on that lap, and we'll take a look down how the cars were placed. We're still up on top of the mountain, taking a look at the car. That's the Gemini Isuzu number 57. That's already been brought down on the back of one of those quick lift cars. Okay, the completed number of laps of 121 was to see the Dick Johnson and John French combination in the Falcon number 17 in first place. The Channel 7 Falcon of Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick in second. The amazing Mazda peripheral ported RX-7 number 43 of Alan Moffat and Derek Bell in third. The number 11 Commodore in fourth place, Gary Rogers and Clive Benson Brown. In fifth place, the Alan Brown, Tony Edmondson Commodore. In sixth place, the Moore Gibson entry that, of course, you've seen involved in that accident. In seventh place, the John Player BMW, Alan Grice and David Hobbs. In eighth place, the Capri, number 32 of Colin Bond and Don Smith. In ninth place, the Privateer Falcon of Gary Wilmington and Mike Griffin. In 10th place, the Falcon of English and Donnelly. And Peter Williamson up in 11th place overall in the Toyota Celica number 77. Well, that's the scene on top of the mountain as we flick through for you the placings back to 12. Williamson and Smith in 11th, and the Capri, Marston and Stewart in 12th place. In 13th, the Camaro of Kevin Bartlett, involved in that accident on top of the mountain, and Bob Forbes. In 14th place, car number 29, Speedway driver Brian Callaghan and Peter McKay. 15th is the Falcon of veteran Victorian driver Murray Carter and New Zealand driver Graham Lawrence. In 16th, the Commodore number 26, the Taylor Kennedy Commodore. In 17th place, the Ford Capri number 39 of Nelson and Jones. In 18th, the Capri number 46, the Gates Craft car. 19th place, number 21, the Dixon Stevens Camaro. And in 20th place, the Alfetta number 50, the Leggett and McDonnell entry. Well, probably a disappointing finish to the race under these circumstances, as any motor racing enthusiast would say. People feel a little flat that they would like to see it go all the way through to the finish. However, with the track completely blocked on top of the mountain, it would be really impractical to be able to restart the event because of the time factor. It's going to take an amount of time not only to remove the cars off the circuit, but also then to clean up the circuit, because we have metal, we have broken wheels, glass, we have just about everything on top of the mountain. And in fact, the people won't be able to use the roadway up there for, I would think, an hour or so, or maybe even 2 hours, for the spectators to even get off the top of the mountain and back onto the exit roads out of the course. IBM printout following through all the positions as of that lap, so we can bring you a complete update of that. Well, it's been a day of tremendous action here in the James Hardie 1000. We've never had a finish to the race like this. Some of the great races around the world, the Indianapolis 500, have had similar finishes under spectacular circumstances. But we saw this morning, of course, Kevin Bartlett sit on pole position, and after the completion of 121 laps, I think it was, Bartlett was to be involved in that accident on top of the mountain. The printout continues of all of the vehicles as they finish. Many had their race done early in the day. Of course, Alan Jones and Warren Cullen, who teamed in the Advanced Australia Commodore, were up as high as 6th place. Alan Jones took over the car, had problems starting it and getting it out of the pits, but then only completed 1 lap. So Alan Jones will certainly remember the James Hardie 1000 for 1981. It was an early withdrawal after looking a chance in the event for perhaps not outright, but certainly for a finish in the top 10. Okay, we are now going down to Gary Wilkinson, who is in our pit studio, and hopefully he will have Alan Moffat there with him. Take it away, Gary.
Thank you very much, Mike. Alan, undoubtedly one of the most safety-conscious drivers in the business. Were you surprised, though, that they didn't decide to continue with the race and endeavour to get the track cleared?
Well, that's the clerk of course's decision, Gary, and the organisers at their discretion. We did pass the mandatory 2/3 distance, so it's disappointing, naturally. I guess it had to happen here at some stage or another, but just where we were at the time, it's not the time we wanted it to happen.
I was going to say, in the confusion, I don't think I'm really aware, second or third, you were on the track at the time.
We would have had to have passed Bob to get second, so as it happened, we're third. I don't think you pick up places on the replay, so to speak.
You're surprised that an accident of this dimensions has occurred on this circuit?
Not really. It's a pretty hairy place. It's no chicken run. The demands on the driver mentally, as you get a little bit fatigued, the heat gets in the car. We're very conscious of the ventilation for the drivers. Sometimes fumes can be coming in, subtle monoxide fumes or just petrol fumes can just take the edge off the driver, and he sort of thinks he's going all right, but he really isn't. Everybody who's been a sportsman knows what that feeling's like. And I think there's always the potential for it. A lot of times the car's in a four-wheel drift. I mean, a couple of times there I felt like hanging onto the steering wheel with my teeth. I thought I was going out the door with the centrifugal forces. And a lot of things mechanically and mentally and just every other way happening. The crowd are waving at you, distractions. It's not surprising to me that something like this has happened.
A couple of drivers commented in interviews and through our camera cars about the lack of courtesy of some of the once-a-year drivers.
That's true. Quite honestly, I don't like to knock the slow car drivers. Everybody's got to start somewhere, but I don't think Bathurst is the place. And I think it would really behoove the organizers to start thinking about a shut-off time and, let the entry get 100 cars up here on Tuesday or Wednesday, but sort the ones that are goers out from the ones that are just drifting around. And there were 3 of them out there today that, quite honestly, had no business being here whatsoever.
Well, the race is finished. Alan Moffat is officially 3rd on the results list, and you'll be back.
Well, let's see, 3rd this year, 2nd the year after. And...
They're the words of Alan Moffat. The race is over, but the action continues here at Mount Panorama. We'll be returning to it after this break.
Here's another super spring special from Thomas Service Centre. A Holden Gemini TX sedan, registered HFL 276. It's a 75 model with radio, heater, 4 on the floor and many other top-class extras. A very clean vehicle. It's priced to sell at just $3,790.
Those magnificent men with their driving machines. Thomas Service Centre.
What's in the suitcase, Sal?
That's all the money we saved on petrol by using Castrol GTX.
Come on. You expect me to believe that you saved money on petrol by using GTX motor oil?
Yeah, friction-modified Castrol GTX works so good that if you're smart and watch how you're going, you can use less petrol. We saved all this just on petrol.
Later, sweetheart. You guys finally getting smart, huh?
Friction-modified Castrol GTX has potential to save you money on petrol.
Gary's carrying that on 18. How'd you carry it? Okay, we'll do that for you. You get your picture from
I hope you can hear me. You can't. Well, to you 8 million people across Australia, the 5,000 in front can't hear what's going on. And you may not be able to hear what's going on, but I was about to say that the news from Bathurst is that we've had Kevin Bartlett taken to Bathurst Hospital to check on the hip. And as far as we know, that's the only injury. Bob Morris is shocked and maybe has a bruised knee. Otherwise, it looks pretty good from that great shambles of the accident up there. I'd like to be able to announce to the crowd, who are giving me a bad time, that because of the unusual nature of the finish, and if we could have these wires connected, it'll make things a lot easier. The officials can't announce the places except for the outright first. That is known, that is clear. And rather than risk it without the crowd hearing, I'd like to hold off for a few seconds so we can try and see if we can get the people with the public address system to do it. Can you hear me down there now? It's James Hardie, my father. what you might call a popular win. I didn't even announce the names. I think you know that they're Dick Johnson and John French. And before we hear from them, let me call upon to make the presentation.
John, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, we worked very, very hard for this. It's just a shame that it had to happen in such a way that it never got right to the very finish. But, however, at least we made some impression in the last 20 laps or so, and I really think that the car possibly would have made it to the end because we had no problems at all. Everything was really cruising well. The old Ford, she never stopped. To the people of Australia who supported us after last year, to those people, thank you very much indeed. Because without your support, we wouldn't have made it. And the people that really help us throughout the year, the people that help us, like Palmer Tube Mills, our sponsors, and also the people from Queensland, the Ford dealers from Queensland, because everyone in Queensland loves a Ford, and I'm sure that everyone in Australia loves a Ford.